There are moments in life when something invisible brushes past you and leaves you quietly changed. You can't point to it, can't photograph it, yet you feel it in your bones. A pull, a flicker, a thought that isn't entirely yours. You're walking down a crowded street or scrolling through your phone late at night when suddenly a person you haven't seen in months or years flares up in your awareness. Their name hums in your mind like static. Their face flashes behind your eyes as though projected from somewhere else. You pause unsettled because it feels less like remembering and more like being remembered. We live in a world that prizes rational explanations, coincidence, chance, cognitive bias. These are the labels we've been taught to affix to the uncanny. But the deeper you go into your own emotional life, the harder it is to dismiss the timing of certain thoughts and encounters. As Carl Jung wrote, synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. That sentence, so simple on the surface, contains a daring hypothesis. Not everything meaningful can be reduced to cause and effect. Some experiences are meaningful because of their pattern, their resonance, their timing. When two people form a deep emotional bond, they leave an imprint on each other's nervous systems. That imprint doesn't dissolve when the contact stops. It lingers, like an echo in a canyon. Imagine your nervous system as a vast web of wires. Each strong connection you make in life burns a channel into that circuitry. The other person's voice, scent, gestures, all of it becomes coded into you. And sometimes, when they think of you intensely enough, when memory and emotion converge on their end, it activates the wiring on yours. You experience it as a sudden pang, a dream, a pull toward their world even from a distance. Neuroscience gives us part of the story. Mirror neurons, attachment systems, and implicit memory show us how deeply one human can shape another. But psychology alone doesn't fully explain the eerie simultaneity. The phone calls at the exact moment you're thinking of them. The dreams you both report having in the same week. The songs that surface at just the right time. That's where the realm of the symbolic begins. As Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The transformation doesn't simply end when you part ways. It leaves a residue, an unfinished vibration. Think about the last time you were abruptly flooded by a memory. You weren't trying to recall it. It simply rose, vivid and insistent. It might have been triggered by a scent, a phrase, or nothing obvious at all. The quality of that experience, its suddenness and totality, often signals more than nostalgia. It can be a clue that something inside you, or between you and someone else, is stirring. The subconscious rarely shouts. It whispers. And if the other person's subconscious is whispering too, you sometimes end up in a kind of unplanned duet. From a mythic standpoint, ancient cultures assumed this interconnectedness as a given. They spoke of telepathy, sympathetic magic, and threads of fate. Our ancestors built entire cosmologies around the belief that souls can reach across distance. Modern life has replaced those mythologies with data streams and notifications. But the undercurrent remains. Even in a digital age, we still feel the shiver of someone thinking about us. We still wake from a dream about an old friend only to find their message waiting on our phone. Consider the experience of emotional timing. Two people might walk parallel paths for years without intersecting. One moves on, another heals, and life scatters them like leaves. Yet at a certain point, after heartbreak, growth, or self-discovery, their thoughts start looping back to each other. This isn't nostalgia in the conventional sense. It's as if both minds are tuning to the same frequency at once. In physics, two tuning forks of the same pitch will vibrate sympathetically, even when only one is struck. Human consciousness appears to follow a similar principle. That sympathetic resonance can be startling. You wake with their name in your head, check your messages, and there it is, an email. A friend mentioning them, a memory popping up from years ago. The coincidence rattles you because it feels like someone or something is orchestrating the encounter. Perhaps no one is. Perhaps it's simply the natural consequence of psychological encoding. But the timing still feels charged with meaning. It interrupts your day the way lightning interrupts a sky. Sudden, luminous, undeniable. Jung believed that this type of experience is not a trivial oddity but a fundamental feature of reality. Until you make the unconscious conscious, he warned. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When two people are thinking of each other at the same time, it may be a sign that unconscious material is surfacing. Unfinished business, unprocessed grief, or an unspoken desire. Rather than dismissing these moments, he would advise examining them. What is trying to become conscious? What part of your inner story is still unfinished? In practical terms, this means paying attention not only to the occurrence but also to your internal state when it happens. Are you lonely? Are you on the verge of a breakthrough? Are you about to make a major decision? Often the mutual thought coincides with a threshold moment, a point where your psyche is ready to reevaluate a past connection. In that way, the other person you're thinking about is as much a symbol as a subject, a mirror reflecting back your current evolution. This doesn't mean that every thought of someone is mutual, nor that every coincidence signals destiny. Sometimes a dream is just a dream, but patterns matter. Repetition matters. If a name or face begins to punctuate your days with uninvited precision, that's your subconscious sending up flares. And if you later discover the other person was simultaneously revisiting memories of you, then the pattern deepens from personal symbol to shared experience. Jung also wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This privilege demands self-examination. When you catch yourself dwelling on someone, ask, what part of me did they awaken that I have not yet owned? What wound do they mirror? What aspiration did they once embody?" The answer may have less to do with the other person and more to do with the aspects of yourself you're being called to reclaim. Another striking feature of these mutual thought episodes is their tendency to break through during liminal states, those in-between zones where consciousness is more porous, falling asleep, waking up, showering, commuting, moments when your rational mind loosens its grip. The subconscious seizes such openings to push content into awareness. It's no accident that dreams are a primary theater for this phenomenon. Dreams bypass the ego's defenses, letting symbols, emotions, and even other people's psychic fingerprints slip through. When you wake from a vivid dream about someone and can't shake the feeling all day, you're experiencing the afterglow of this porousness. Sometimes the dream even carries new information, a piece of insight, an emotional realization, or an image of the person in circumstances you later discover are real. Skeptics dismiss this as coincidence, but to the person experiencing it, the timing feels too precise to ignore. Such experiences accumulate like small stones in a pocket, weighing on you until you acknowledge them. The invisible tether between two people is not always benevolent. It can also be a source of restlessness, confusion, or even anguish. Mutual thinking doesn't guarantee harmony. It simply signals connection, unfinished, unresolved, or ongoing. As you become more attuned to it, you must also cultivate discernment. Not every signal demands action. Not every synchronicity should be chased. Sometimes the healthiest response is to witness the phenomenon, glean its message, and continue your growth independently. Yet when handled with respect, these experiences can be profoundly healing. They can alert you to hidden feelings, inspire creative work, or push you to reconcile with parts of your past. They can also teach humility, a reminder that your inner world is not a sealed container, but part of a larger field of consciousness, a web of invisible threads binding all living minds. As Jung observed, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Mutual thinking invites precisely that kind of inward looking. When someone appears in your thoughts repeatedly, especially with a sensation of simultaneity, treat it as an invitation to awaken. What you're awakening to may not be a reunion with them, but a reunion with yourself, with the version of you who once felt something profound, who is now ready to integrate the lesson and move forward more whole. In a culture dominated by noise, distraction, and algorithmic nudges, paying attention to subtle inner signals can feel radical. Yet it's often in the subtleties that the deepest truths reside. The invisible, the quiet, the in-between. That's where the psyche does its most transformative work. And when two people's inner lives begin to overlap in that liminal space, you are witnessing not a trick, but a dialogue. A conversation without words. A resonance that defies the linear logic of ordinary communication. This is the terrain we're entering. The hidden psychology of connection. The unconscious currents that link minds and hearts across time and space. We're not in the realm of fairy tales, but of deep patterns. Patterns that, when observed carefully, reveal how profoundly human beings are wired for each other. And as the invisible threads of thought, memory, and timing weave their way through your life, you may discover that your story with another person is not simply over. It is evolving, quietly, mysteriously, and perhaps preparing you for a new chapter you hadn't imagined. Sometimes the most profound movements in life occur not in the daylight of action, but in the twilight of the unseen. When two people carry each other inside their nervous systems, the boundary between my thought and your thought becomes more like a membrane than a wall. Memories seep across it. Emotions echo. And over time, those echoes form patterns. Repeated signals that seem to announce themselves just when you are ready to listen. If you've ever experienced this, you know the difference between a passing memory and the sudden arrival of a presence. The passing memory is like a photograph. The presence is like a live transmission. It carries a texture, an emotional charge, a certain nowness that jolts you. Often it arrives when you are open, walking, dreaming, meditating, or resting. Those pockets of the day when your rational guard drops, just enough for something else to slip in. Modern neuroscience has begun to hint at this permeability. Studies on empathy and attachment show how one person's emotional state can trigger measurable changes in another's, even without words. But beyond the lab, ordinary people have long intuited it. We say someone is on our wavelength, close in spirit, or tuned in. We're acknowledging that relationships create a field, a subtle environment around and between us. Carl Jung took this idea further than most. He proposed that the psyche is not confined to the skull, but extends into a collective unconscious, a realm of shared symbols and archetypes. In that realm, your personal memories mingle with patterns older than you, larger than you. This is why certain dreams feel universal, why myths from distant cultures resemble each other, and why your private longing for one person can sometimes feel like it's part of a much larger story unfolding. Jung wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." This is as true of the inner world as of the outer one. When you find yourself repeatedly thinking of someone, or when you suspect they are thinking of you, you may be glimpsing a hidden order, not a destiny, not a script, but an underlying structure to the emotional universe you share. This hidden order often shows itself through symbols. Symbols are the language of the unconscious. They bypass rational filters and strike directly at the emotional core. The other person's favorite song comes on just as you're thinking of them. A book you open randomly contains a line of dialogue you once exchanged. You see their birth date on a license plate or receipt at an uncanny moment. These coincidences are often dismissed as apophenia, the brain's tendency to find patterns in noise, but they can also be understood as synchronicities, meaningful parallels that arise from a deeper shared field. The difference between superstition and synchronicity is your relationship to it. Superstition tries to control the future. Synchronicity invites you to interpret the present. The moment you experience the sign, you're not being commanded to act. You're being invited to understand. What does it mean about your emotional state? What does it reveal about the unfinished business between you? What lesson is your psyche trying to bring to the surface? Think of the psyche as an iceberg. The conscious mind floats above the waterline. Narratives, plans, and conscious desires. Beneath lies the vast unconscious, where repressed memories, archetypes, and emotional truths dwell. When two people have intertwined deeply, their icebergs overlap below the surface. Even when the visible tips drift apart, the submerged parts remain entangled. This is why your dreams can feature them so vividly. Why your body can react to their presence or their absence with inexplicable precision. When you begin to notice these undercurrents, you also begin to see how timing plays a crucial role. You might not think of someone for months. Then, at a time of personal transition, a breakup, a new job, a move, they re-enter your consciousness. Their appearance coincides with your emotional readiness to process something old or to see it from a new angle. In many cases, they're undergoing their own transition, and the parallel timing draws your inner worlds back into resonance. This doesn't always signal romance or reconciliation. Sometimes it's about healing. Sometimes it's about closure. Sometimes it's about integrating a lesson you couldn't face before. As Jung observed, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. When two people's thoughts collide across time and space, it can be a gentle nudge or a painful jolt. Either way, it's a call to awareness. Awareness begins with curiosity. Instead of brushing off the memory or panicking at the coincidence, you pause. You ask yourself what's alive in you right now that this memory resonates with. Are you ready to forgive? Ready to let go? Ready to reclaim a piece of your identity that got lost in that relationship? By treating the synchronicity as data, not destiny, you extract its meaning without surrendering your power. One of the richest arenas for this kind of exploration is the dream world. Dreams are the psyche's natural medium for communication. They are unpoliced, symbolic, and often prophetic, not in the fortune-telling sense, but in the psychological sense of pointing toward what's emerging. When you dream of someone repeatedly, especially in scenarios charged with emotion, it's worth noting the details. What are they saying? What are you feeling? Is the atmosphere peaceful, tense, unresolved? Dreams often dramatize the emotional truth of a connection long before the conscious mind admits it. You can even treat dreams as a form of dialogue. Write them down. Reflect on the themes. Notice how your feelings about the person evolve over time in the dream space. Sometimes you'll see the same shift you're undergoing in waking life. Less desperation, more clarity. Less pain, more compassion. This mirroring can be a sign that your psyche is successfully integrating the connection, even if you never speak to the person again. Another layer to this phenomenon is the body. The body is not separate from the mind. It is the mind's extension into the physical. When the emotional bridge between you and another vibrates, you can feel it as physical sensation. A heaviness in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a sudden wave of calm or anxiety. You think it's random, but the timing corresponds to a thought, a memory, or even an event unfolding in the other person's life. Whether this is energetic transmission, or simply the nervous system's echo, is less important than the fact that it's real to your experience. By acknowledging it, you begin to regain agency. Instead of feeling haunted, you feel informed. Instead of being swept along by the tide, you learn to read the currents. This shift in perspective transforms mutual thinking from a mystery to a message. And once it becomes a message, it can guide you toward deeper self-understanding. Jung's approach to symbols and synchronicity wasn't about blind belief. It was about participation. He saw the psyche as a living system constantly seeking balance and wholeness. When two people share a profound connection, that system often uses mutual thought as a way to nudge each toward completion. It's not about the other person's approval. It's about your own individuation, your journey toward becoming whole. Individuation does not shut one out from the world, Jung wrote. It gathers the world to itself. This is the paradox of mutual thinking. By truly exploring the connection, you're not sinking deeper into dependence. You're integrating the aspects of yourself that were projected onto the other. Each synchronicity is a breadcrumb leading you back to your own center. In practical terms, this might mean noticing how your fantasies about the person have changed. Early on, the thoughts might have been about reunion, apology, or revenge. Over time, as you grow, the thoughts become gentler, more reflective, more nuanced. You see them not as a missing piece, but as a mirror of your own evolution. This is the work of the unconscious, the transformation of raw longing into self-awareness. The shift can be subtle but powerful. You might wake up one morning after yet another vivid dream and feel not yearning, but gratitude. Gratitude for what the connection taught you, for the parts of yourself it revealed, for the way it propelled your growth. This gratitude marks a turning point. It means the bond has moved from a live wire to an integrated memory, from a haunting to a teacher. Yet even gratitude doesn't erase mystery. The invisible threads between people remain one of life's most alluring enigmas. Science can map neurons and measure hormones, but it can't yet explain the uncanny simultaneity of two minds reaching for each other at the same moment. Whether you call it resonance, synchronicity, or soul connection, the experience itself is undeniable. And in acknowledging it, you enter a richer, more textured relationship with your own psyche. As you explore these currents, it's crucial to keep your discernment. Not every sign is a summons. Not every coincidence requires a response. Sometimes the wisest course is to simply observe. Observation in itself is a form of participation, a way of allowing the unconscious to unfold without interference. By holding the tension between mystery and meaning, you give the psyche room to complete its work. And in that space, between your thought and theirs, between memory and anticipation, something quietly powerful begins to happen. You become less interested in controlling outcomes and more interested in understanding patterns. You stop grasping for certainty and start cultivating insight. This is the essence of depth psychology, to see beyond the surface and recognize the living patterns shaping your life. As you travel further into this interior terrain, you begin to see that mutual thinking is not a random glitch of the mind, but an aspect of a deeper principle. Psyche seeks wholeness. Whenever a connection between two people has been profound, psyche will continue to move the unfinished parts toward completion, like water running downhill, seeking its level. At first, this can feel like being haunted, but as you develop awareness, it becomes clear that you are not simply receiving the other person's thoughts. You are also encountering your own projections. In every close relationship, a portion of your psyche has been invested in the other. Jung called this the projection of the anima or animus, inner archetypal images of the opposite or complementary principle. When you fall in love, when you develop deep attachment, you're also meeting a part of yourself embodied in another person. This realization can feel unsettling. If part of your bond is your own psyche looking at itself, then perhaps the other person was never as essential as you thought. Yet this is not a diminishment of the relationship. It's an enrichment. It means that every significant connection you form also functions as a mirror, showing you your undiscovered terrain. And when the physical relationship ends, the inner work does not. The reflection remains until its lesson is absorbed. Carl Jung captured this dynamic when he wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Irritation is only one side of the coin. So is longing, admiration, or the sense of mystical resonance. Each intense reaction is a signpost pointing inward. Each mutual thought or coincidence is a flare, illuminating the subterranean passage between your conscious self and your unconscious material. The unconscious, however, does not simply present these lessons in a linear way. It weaves them through symbols, images, dreams, and, occasionally, external events. In this weaving, time behaves strangely. You might dream of a scenario with the other person that later echoes in waking life. Or you might remember an old conversation, only to discover it was more prescient than you realized. In Jungian terms, this is the causal connecting principle at work, the psyche, arranging events to mirror your inner state. In practical life, the challenge is to relate to these occurrences with neither naive belief nor rigid skepticism. Both extremes block understanding. Instead, you cultivate what Jung called a symbolic attitude. You ask, if this were a dream, what would it mean? This question places the event into a psychological frame rather than a literal one. By doing so, you honor the reality of the experience without surrendering your agency to it. A symbolic attitude also frees you from obsessiveness. Instead of clinging to each sign as proof of destiny, you treat it as a message from your own depth. The mutual thinking becomes a feedback loop between your conscious life and your unconscious development. This reframing allows you to glean meaning without getting lost in speculation about what the other person is thinking or feeling. Sometimes, of course, the other person really is thinking of you at the same moment. Emotional attunement does happen, especially between people who've shared intimacy or trauma. But the point of depth psychology is not to prove telepathy. It's to understand how your psyche uses these resonances to guide you toward individuation, the process of becoming whole and uniquely yourself. Individuation does not mean isolation. It means integration. All the lost or split-off parts of you are gradually brought into conscious awareness and reintegrated. The other person plays a crucial role in this process because they've held pieces of you in their gaze, in their care, or even in their rejection. By recalling them, dreaming of them, or sensing them across distances, you are retrieving those pieces. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is perhaps the most important insight when it comes to mutual thinking. If you treat the recurring thoughts as mere fate, "We're destined to be together," or "I'll never be free," then the unconscious directs you. But if you approach the thoughts as signals, you gain the power to work with them. You can journal, reflect, or bring the material into therapy. You can extract the archetype from the person, seeing the universal pattern behind the individual face. Doing this can radically shift your relationship to longing. Longing can become a teacher rather than a tormentor. Instead of feeling deprived, you begin to feel expanded. The energy that once spun outward toward the other now begins to circulate inward, nourishing your creativity, your friendships, your spiritual practice. Many artists, poets, and visionaries have transmuted such longing into their life's work. They discovered that the intensity of the connection was a fuel, not a prison. As you progress, you may also notice your dreams changing tone. Earlier, they may have been charged with desire or anxiety, reunions, arguments, unfinished gestures. Later, they may become more symbolic, journeys, gifts, landscapes. This shift signals integration. The psyche is moving from literal representations of the person to archetypal representations of what they signify. Instead of dreaming of your former partner directly, you dream of a bridge, a key, a window, a mentor. The unconscious has translated the personal into the transpersonal. Another sign of integration is a newfound freedom in waking life. You might encounter the person on the street or online and feel calm rather than destabilized. Or you might find yourself thinking of them with genuine goodwill rather than with craving or resentment. This does not mean you must contact them or rekindle anything. It simply means the energy between you has moved from compulsion to choice. Yet even as you reach this point, mystery remains. Mutual thinking does not vanish entirely. It may continue to arise in subtle ways. A song, a memory, a sudden sense of connection. But the quality changes. It becomes less like being pulled and more like being reminded. Less like an unfinished sentence, and more like a completed poem you revisit occasionally. This is the ultimate promise of depth psychology. Not to remove mystery, but to transform your relationship to it. In this transformation, you cultivate what could be called psychic literacy, the ability to read the symbols of your own inner life and to act accordingly. This literacy helps you navigate all relationships with greater clarity, compassion, and autonomy. From a spiritual perspective, one could say that mutual thinking is an invitation to experience interbeing, the reality that no self exists entirely apart from others. But from a psychological perspective, it is also a call to self-possession. You learn that your mind can extend beyond its boundaries, but also that your center resides within. You can sense the other without losing yourself. In everyday practice, you can work with mutual thinking in several ways. Mindful noticing. When the thought or sign arises, pause. Name it. Note your emotional state. Symbolic inquiry. Ask, if this were a dream, what would it say about me right now? Integration rituals. Write letters you never send, draw images, meditate, or engage in active imagination. One of Jung's core techniques for dialoguing with unconscious figures. Grounding practices. Balance the inner work with exercise, time in nature, and social connections to keep from becoming overly absorbed in psychic phenomena. These practices shift you from being a passive recipient of mutual thinking to an active participant in your own individuation. Over time, the connection ceases to feel like a riddle you must solve and becomes a source of insight you can integrate. Finally, it's important to honor the humanity of the other person. They are not just an archetype or a symbol in your story. They are a complex individual living their own journey. Recognizing this duality, symbol and person, keeps you grounded. It allows you to hold the mystery with respect rather than projection. In the end, mutual thinking may be less about two minds fusing than about the psyche demonstrating its own depth. It is a lived reminder that consciousness is not a sealed container but an unfolding field, and that every bond you form participates in that field. As you grow in awareness, you participate more consciously, and in doing so, you discover the quiet power of your own inner life. By now, you've traveled through the hidden corridors of mutual thinking, its psychological roots, its archetypal underpinnings, its transformative potential. What remains is to understand how to live with it, how to let it guide rather than govern, and how to transmute it into something constructive for your own growth. Mutual thinking is, at its essence, a phenomenon of connection. But connection does not always mean contact. Sometimes the most profound connection exists without conversation or physical presence. It lives in memory, in dreams, in subtle energy fields. In the modern world, which prizes constant communication, this can feel paradoxical. But Jung's work reminds us that psyche operates according to its own rhythms, independent of social expectations. Jung once observed, loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. Mutual thinking, paradoxically, is a form of communication that happens beneath words. It's a psychic reminder that even when two people are apart, some inner conversation continues, whispering truths that cannot yet be spoken aloud. When you learn to listen to these whispers without becoming obsessed, you begin to glimpse a larger pattern. You see that each strong connection in your life carries a lesson. Each unfinished feeling points to a part of yourself still in formation. This is the inner architecture of individuation. Relationships are its scaffolding. Even the ones that break or fade away leave behind beams and planks of insight you can use to build your next stage. The final stage of working with mutual thinking is integration. Integration means you no longer see the phenomenon as something happening to you, but as a collaboration between your conscious and unconscious selves. It's no longer an intrusion, but an invitation. The energy that once spiraled outward toward the other now radiates inward, nourishing your own center. In this state, you can still feel the other person's presence, but it no longer destabilizes you. It stabilizes you. This does not mean detachment in the cold sense. It means the freedom to experience connection without compulsion. It means being able to wish someone well without needing to possess them, to remember someone without being trapped in nostalgia, to sense someone without surrendering your autonomy. This is a mature form of empathy, sensitive yet self-possessed. Jung captured the essence of this maturity when he wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Looking inside doesn't mean ignoring the outer world. It means integrating the outer experiences into your inner narrative, so that you live more consciously. Mutual thinking thus becomes a mirror, reflecting your own depths, prompting you to awaken. Practically, integration might look like this. You still think of the person, but instead of anxiety, you feel curiosity. You still dream of them, but instead of longing, you sense symbolism. You still notice coincidences, but instead of leaping to conclusions, you explore meanings. In short, you develop a steadier relationship with mystery. You don't rush to shut it down, but you don't let it take over. This equilibrium is the hallmark of individuation. One powerful practice to support integration is active imagination, a method Jung developed to converse directly with figures from the unconscious. You might sit quietly, close your eyes, and allow an image of the person to arise. Then, instead of simply watching, you engage them in dialogue, asking questions, listening to their responses, noticing how your own feelings shift. This can bring remarkable clarity and closure without needing real-world contact. Another supportive practice is creative expression. When mutual thinking brings a surge of energy, channel it. Write poetry, paint, compose music, journal, or simply walk in nature while reflecting. These acts convert psychic charge into embodied expression, which helps ground and integrate the experience. It's also helpful to maintain community and grounded activities. Deep psychological work can be isolating if done in a vacuum. By staying connected to supportive friends, mentors, or groups, you keep a healthy perspective. You remember that while your inner life is vast and rich, you are also a social being with a body, a present moment, and a wider network. Over time, you may discover that mutual thinking has reshaped you. Perhaps you are more empathetic. Perhaps you trust your intuition more. Perhaps you have clearer boundaries. All of these are signs of growth. The ultimate goal is not to stop mutual thinking, but to allow it to evolve from a tug-of-war into a gentle current guiding you toward authenticity. And here lies one final paradox. The more you integrate the connection, the less special it seems in a magical sense, and the more sacred it feels in a human sense. Instead of seeing it as an inexplicable miracle, you see it as part of the deep structure of psyche, a universal capacity. This recognition connects you not only to one person, but to humanity itself. You realize that everyone you meet could become a mirror, a teacher, a participant in your individuation. From this wider vantage point, mutual thinking is not a private quirk, but a glimpse of collective consciousness. It's an invitation to humility, empathy, and self-awareness. You no longer ask, "Are they thinking of me right now?" But what is this experience teaching me about how minds interconnect, about how souls mirror each other? This shift in question is itself an awakening. It marks the transition from outer focus to inner mastery, from craving certainty to embracing mystery, from passively receiving signals to actively participating in meaning-making. In Jungian terms, this is individuation in action, the movement from fragmentation to integration, from projection to ownership, from unconscious compulsion to conscious choice. If there is one lasting takeaway from this journey, it is this. Mutual thinking is not a glitch, it's a guide. When you treat it as a guide, it can lead you back to your own depths, to your own heart, to the living field of symbols and archetypes that shapes every human life. And in following that guide, you become more fully yourself, more capable of authentic connection, more attuned to the hidden currents of psyche. If you found these explorations insightful, if you felt the resonance of your own experiences in these words, then consider subscribing. By subscribing, you'll receive more in-depth journeys into the hidden dimensions of psychology, relationships, and self-transformation. Each new installment will offer fresh perspectives, practical tools, and inspiring ideas for navigating the inner landscape. Subscribe now to stay connected, deepen your understanding, and continue this journey of self-discovery with a growing community of like-minded seekers.